Hello, one and all. We're in here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where the Pacers just got the preseason going at home, hosting the Grizzlies for their first of two preseason games. Good to be back. The court's a little more yellow. It's very bright in here right now, exceedingly bright. This is probably the brightest that I've been on the floor before. We have a lot to talk about in a strange way. It was an interesting one for the Pacers because some stuff was okay. Their zone defense that they're just kind of adding in very recently looked pretty solid. Jarace Walker came alive in the fourth quarter. Cole Swider, as Ben Shepard said, shooting the piss out of the ball, but they still lost, and still, I would say, largely a night that they will walk away not feeling very good about in the end. They lost 120 to 116 is the final score. I don't even know why I'm telling you the final score. It's a preseason game. It's truly not the story of the game. It's not something that particularly matters in evaluating what happened. What does matter is what was new, what wasn't new, and who stood out in these moments. And I think the standout thing that Rick Carlisle, the head coach, was talking about after the game just a couple minutes ago, that the team was talking about, and that continues to be a theme in these preseason games, is really bad starts, especially on the defensive end. And something I talked about leading up in this game other places was, hey, this Pacers team has to defend better. They've got to start better on defense. So their starting five was terrible on that end of the floor in Cleveland. Well, today, they didn't really have the starting five. Pascal Siakam was sitting out for rest. Tyrese Haliburton sitting out for rest. Aaron Nesmith, a sore ankle. That's three of their five starters not playing. So there was no evaluation on that specific group's ability to play better, to recover, to look like a more effective team on the defensive end. Instead, a much different starting group with Obi Toppin in there, with Ben Mathurin, with Jarace Walker in there, and then Andrew Nembhard and Myles Turner retain their normal spots. And so perhaps that group would start with more juice. Instead, the opposite. They looked really slow to get things going. Desmond Bane was getting wherever he wanted. He was controlling the tempo with his movement, with his shot fakes, with his ability to just keep the ball moving. He ended up having 23 points. Ben Mathurin had some nice individual possessions on him, but some tougher team possessions and got beat a few times. Bane was really feeling it for the Grizzlies, and so this game started off so poor for the Pacers once again, especially on the defensive end. The Pacers lost by 4. They were down 14 after the first quarter, right? I don't think they played particularly great the rest of the game, but they won that stretch by 10 points. They got to be happy with 36 minutes of the game being in their favor. They just started so pathetically poor on the defensive end, and for a team that relies so much on transition, on ball movement to get going, when they can't get stops and hit the open floor, it's really tough for them to really get juice, and that doubles and even really rolls more without Tyrese Haliburton, without Pascal Siakam, two of their best creators. And then TJ McConnell was also out for this game due to rest. He's with the second group, so didn't apply to my earlier discussion about who was out. But altogether, you keep stacking these players who are out. You keep looking at who's missing and what they're missing. They could not get any juice in the first quarter on either end of the floor. They couldn't guard, and that prevented them from getting in transition, and they couldn't score partially because of that, partially because they had no juice, no ball movement at all. They would set up one action, they'd flip it to the other side of the floor, and then immediately that was it. They'd flow into a pick and roll, and that was the end of their ball movement, of their random action offense that they like to call it. It did not look good in that quarter in particular. Rick Carlisle very unhappy with that start. He didn't like his team's, as he called it, attitude for the first few minutes of this game and how it kind of bled into the whole team for that stretch, and they picked it up, but very unhappy with that, even though things got better, right? The bench came in and supplied some energy. They, again, outscored the Grizzlies by 10 for the rest of the game with the exact same lineups and rotations, essentially, but it was just such a poor start. They couldn't make up for it, and that will be the lasting takeaway. First impressions go a long way. The result obviously will show that they lost, and all of that was because of their poor start, and their defense continues to be thematically bad, especially their man defense. Some of the new zone stuff they put in actually worked pretty well, especially against a team with Zach Edey, who was crushing them on the inside. But in man defense, they're struggling in pick and rolls. They're not keeping guys in front. Their rotations are too slow. They've got to pick things up on that end of the floor if they want to get close to the team that they hope to be on the defensive end. Some spots of this game were bright for the Pacers. Cole Swider's where I'll start, just because Ben Shepard just told us again that he was shooting the piss out of the ball. He had 10 points on 5 shots to go with 5 rebounds and 3 assists. He's in a battle for the last roster spot. He was plus 12. He was very good. And the guy who told us that about him was Ben Shepard, who was also a bright spot to me. In fact, maybe the brightest spot, I'm not sure exactly. He's been teetering on that line of in or out of the rotation throughout the preseason. A fully healthy Pacers team, it sure seems like Ben Shepard's got number 11 in a 10-man rotation, but he played pretty well today. 12 points. He made 2 threes. One of his threes was right in front of the Pacers bench. His teammates loved it. Another one of his baskets, a beautiful drive through traffic in a pick and roll and finished at the rim. That one got his teammates excited. He led the team, or at least tied for leading the team with 5 assists, and it was team high plus 13 right? He did not play with that starting group that stunk. Instead, he was with a lot of groups that did do very well. Ben Shepherd had a nice game, and it's going to be interesting to see how his rotation spot shakes out this year. Obviously, there will be injuries. He'll play. It's not just going to be all the time sitting and watching, but if he's the 11th man on a 10-man rotation, nights like this will make you go, I wonder if they can try, even though it'll be difficult, to find a role for him, because he plays well when they give him a chance. It's just hard to give him a chance with the depth of this team. But those two were particularly bright spots to me. They made threes. They provided a spark off the bench. Cole Swider's handle continues to be more than I thought it would be for this team. That's more on me than him. I just didn't know enough about that part of his game. But if the shooting is what it is, he made 2 out of the 4 in this game. He's got a chance to stick and be the 15th guy and at least provide some utility for the Pacers. James Wiseman also was a spark, especially on offense. He missed all his free throws, but made every shot he took. 5 for 5 on his way to 10 points. He will always be battling to improve his defense, just like every Pacers big man is. None of them were particularly good in this game on that end, but if you make all 5 of your shots, you're going to have a pretty effective night. Good stuff from James Wiseman. In terms of the starters, they stunk as a unit in general. Myles Turner in the second quarter was quite good. He finished with 12 points and 7 boards. He was their leading scorer and rebounder. At halftime, got going a little late. If he had gotten going at the beginning, they could have been in this one. Rained in 2 threes, had 2 assists. If he had gotten going earlier, it would have been a good night, but took him a while to get off the ground, even though he was the offensive leader by the time he exited the game. Ben Mathurin really struggled to start this game, but he found a groove eventually. It took too long, though. He had 12 points on 12 shots. That's not a game that he particularly wants. Felt like he was forcing it at times. 3 free throw attempts. Not a good follow-up from the night he had in Cleveland. That left many, including me, very impressed and wondered what his potential could be. It's going to be all about consistency for him all season. They let him play 29 minutes in this game. Worked through it, figured it out. He did so in the third quarter. In particular, he looked much better. But started slow and did not have a very good first half. Jarace Walker, the leading scorer by the end of the night, 15.6 rebounds, 4 assists. His final stat line really came alive in the fourth quarter. Some out of actually hitting his shots and finding some spots on the floor, but some out of necessity, right? The lineup on the floor with him in there with Quentin Jackson, Kendall Brown, some other two-way players. He's probably the primary initiator a lot of the time, him or Quentin Jackson, and he finally found some wiggle room to make some stuff happen. Had some nice passes, hit 2 threes, 6 for 11 with 15 points. That sounds like a pretty nice night. He was pretty flimsy earlier in the game. I think he started 1 for 7. That can't be right given what his final stat line was. He started off 1 for something pretty high, and he might have made his last 5 shots. So he got going late, and that was impressive. The Pacers needed it. They can build with that. But not a good night to start for him, even though he finished very well, especially with that fourth quarter. So some stuff the Pacers can smile and say, yep, this is good. Andrew Nembhard found his way to the rim every so often running the show. For the first time, they know what he can do. Enrique Freeman continues to look awesome on the glass, right? All these things that we've known about these guys that continue to show up in the preseason and make fans smile and make the coaching staff smile, but not enough of it and not enough consistency for the Pacers in this one. They're now 1-2 in the preseason. They'll wrap things up Thursday here in the same building with the Charlotte Hornets in town. I'd expect we'll see a little bit more starters. It's the last chance to kind of get a groove rolling for the Pacers, who really need to up their defense, really need to play better on that end of the floor and show something there. We'll, of course, be in this building to cover it right here. You'll have another video on this channel. Thank you guys for watching. See you very soon.